Hi, I'm Joel Bloom, president of New Jersey Institute of Technology. At NJIT, we believe that not only our students, but all citizens need to be informed about the issues facing higher education. As New Jersey's Science and Technology University, NJIT is proud to support the important programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, RWJ Barnabas Health, the Northward Center, PSE&G, committed to providing safe, reliable energy now and in the future, the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., New Jersey Resources, and by TD Bank. Promotional support provided by New Jersey Globe. And by New Jersey Monthly, the magazine of the Garden State, available at newsstands.
This is One-on-One.
I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that. Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
That's a good question. High five.
We are honored to welcome Mr. Kevin Richardson, member of the Exonerated Five, and Vanessa Potkin, director of Post-Conviction Litigation at the Innocence Project. I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Kevin, part of the Exonerated Five, back in April 19th, 1989, the Central Park Five, you were one of those young men. Were you 14?
14 years old, correct.
All 14 except one was 16.
Two was 14, myself and Raymond Santana, we were the two youngest, and two were 15, and Corey was the oldest.
So I was telling you before we got on the air here that I was watching a Netflix special. And by the way, the show that people should watch, the series is When They See Us, is a 4-part miniseries on Netflix. Check it out. But I was watching Oprah Winfrey interview you and your brothers, talking about that experience, and it was a powerful one. But I'm going to ask you, what is the most important message for people to understand that you and your colleagues, you and your friends spent a lot of time in jail? Your innocence was taken away. 14, 15, 16 years of age. How many years did you serve?
I served 7 years in prison.
Where?
I started off in the juvenile facility because I was 16 when I actually went into prison. Then I got transferred as an adult to the adult prison at 21. Then I did the last 3 years there. So it was all everywhere, actually.
I want people to understand this. There were a lot of people at the time in '89, including our president, Donald Trump, who was a private citizen at the time. He took out a full-page ad. Newspapers in New York. He called for the death penalty for all five. I want everyone to understand that in 2002, DNA evidence confirmed that someone else who actually acknowledged that it was him who raped Tricia Miley in 1989 in Central Park, correct?
That's right. A man came forward, Mateus Reyes, and he said that he, started to tell people, I did this crime, I did it alone, and DNA testing was performed and confirmed that his DNA was on multiple items at the crime scene, and he had a history of committing similar crimes all by himself in the area around the time, including a rape that happened just days before in Central Park.
What about the DNA evidence of Kevin and those other young men? Did it match?
So at the time of the crime, the DNA didn't match, and law enforcement knew this, but this just shows the power of confessions, right? These young men were interrogated, ultimately, falsely confessed to the crime.
How much pressure were they under to confess?
Well, these were 14, 15, and 16-year-olds, right? And, what people don't realize is that it's perfectly legal in the United States to lie, for the police to lie when they're interrogating a suspect. And so they can make you believe, if you just tell us what we need to know, you can go home. They say, as they did here, your friend is saying that you did it. And if you don't say something now, you're going to go to prison forever. And so they can lie and intimidate, and people come to believe it's in their best interest to just say what they want, what the police want them to say, and end the interrogation, and it'll all sort itself out later. But it doesn't.
Sorry for interrupting. I hate to bring you back there, but I saw you talk to Oprah about this. You remember the interrogation? It was 30 years ago. Do you remember it?
Yeah, some things you never forget. You know, I just remember the process. Being 14, not knowing what will happen, not knowing if I will come out of the prison, out of the precinct alive. You know, at that age, you're just concerned about just being home, back with your family, and to be there under 3 days of interrogation without food, without water, without proper attention from your parents. It's something that's very devastating. And not only does, like, adults go through this as well, but just imagine someone that's 14, 15, and 16. It's still horrific. It's still horrific to think about it.
You were charged. There was a court case, and Oprah again asked you when you heard guilty, 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 guilty. What's happening for you?
When I heard guilty, I remember I was charged with 13 counts. After the first count, I started to phase out. You know, felt like I was gonna pass out because I just heard guilty, guilty, one by one, 13 times. And I just thought to myself, like, why is this happening? Like, it was, you know, it was clear that we were not guilty. But at the time, at 14, I didn't understand why it was happening.
Was the prosecutor driving this?
Well, I think it was law enforcement, it was police, it was prosecutors. You know, really the prosecutor has an obligation. You know, there were huge discrepancies in the statements, right, with the known facts of the crime. And anybody who took a step back and said, hey, let's really, you know, suss this out. Let's put this to the test. This isn't making sense here, right? Each person is, you know, giving a statement implicating the other, and they're all conflicting with each other. But there was
But how were they convicted?
Well, there was a real thirst to solve the crime. And at the end of the day, it's very hard for people to understand that false confessions occur. And so once there's a confession in a case, it all but equates with a guilty verdict, even in the face of exculpatory DNA, right? So it took for the DNA to be matched to the true assailant for them to be ultimately exonerated.
But in the meantime, what was taken away from you?
What was taken away from me is my youth, being able to grow, not knowing what will happen, you know, and when I get older. One goal I always had, I wanted to attend Syracuse University. I was very into that. During that time, I was a Big East guy from New York, you know, so I followed the basketball team, and I always just wanted to go to that school. Was Derek Coleman the man
at the time?
Yes, he was.
I thought so.
Derek Coleman, Billy Owens.
I got it.
It goes on.
I hear you.
So I've been a fan
Jimmy
since
Boeheim
then.
was there at time. He was there forever. But
yes,
go ahead.
he was. You know.
Go ahead.
So, but there's things like that, and also the basic things that we don't think about, like missing my prom. I wasn't able to fulfill being a kid. You know, I had to grow up fast in the institution.
One of the things about this documentary, or this miniseries on Netflix that struck me, and I've only watched part of it, and I'll make sure that I watch all of it, but I was listening to you and your colleagues, you and your brothers, and you are brothers.
Yes, we're brothers.
For life.
Yes.
You all had different experiences.
Yes.
Tortured in different ways, suffered in different ways.
Yeah.
What keeps you together?
What keeps us together is that we went through this together, and we started as strangers, and then now we're brothers, because if anybody knows, we know exactly what happened to us. I mean, now the world knows because of the series when they see us, but we have that bond going through that, and to still be here 30 years later, to still be relevant, to still have our life story being untold to the world, is something that's very gratifying.
You said, by the way, I said it was a documentary. It's a mini-series, not a documentary. I'm going to clarify something on that. But you said in that special I saw on Netflix, it's painful, but?
It's painful, but it's very necessary.
Because?
Because especially today in this society, people need to be awake, and we need to raise awareness about people that's still being incarcerated that's not guilty. And there's many, the number goes on, there's people that's still innocent. So all we wanted was to have our life story told, and it exceeded what we wanted. And now we just have to keep it alive and keep raising awareness.
Devil's advocate, someone says, you know, these guys got a settlement from the city of New York, $40 million. Yeah, they got to split it between, amongst all of them. There are legal fees, but they got $40 million. Come on. You say.
Who would trade a day of their life to be in a maximum security prison, to be separated from their family, to be, prisons are dehumanizing places.
And knowing you did not do it.
Knowing you didn't do it. That there's no way to ever take away the suffering, the torture. Those psychological scars will always be there.
By the way, stay right there. Corey Wise, one of the 5 of the Exonerated Five, solitary confinement. How long?
For years.
Yeah.
For years. And, compensation doesn't make people who are wrongfully convicted whole. It's necessary, but you can never undo that experience. You can never, compensate somebody or really give them back everything that they lost.
Who's apologized? Who hasn't? City of New York apologized?
No.
Prosecutor's office?
No.
Police?
No.
Courts?
No.
President Donald Trump?
Definitely not.
What would you say to him if you could talk to him face to face?
You know,
I want to be clear. Donald Trump, you can look it up, this isn't anyone's opinion, took out full-page ads in the tabloids in New York and other papers calling for the death penalty for these 5 young men who ultimately were found not to have committed this crime that someone else did, called for the death penalty. Never apologized. What would you say to him?
At this point, I don't think it's much more, anything he was to really say much to him, just to basically, you see the truth. We would have loved and apologized back then, but now we're moved on with our life, and now we don't even pay attention to, we're trying to.
Some of your colleagues, some of your brothers, at least my interpretation, have not moved on.
No, it's hard. Like I said, each day we strive to. Each day is a process. And that's why I want to go back really quick about the settlement.
$40 million.
People have this misconception that we all receive $41 million each or something like that. Now, when you break it up 5 different ways with lawyer fees, family, it doesn't amount to too much. Now, we are definitely able to take care of our family, and I'm happy to do that as a man, to take care of my kids, but that does not take away the time that happened to us. We will easily trade that in. We can't get back those years that we lost, those years that's precious.
Vanessa, what is the message that we should all, in your opinion, take from this, particularly with the work you and your colleagues are doing at the Innocence Project?
Well, we know that wrongful convictions occur. 2,471 people have been proven innocent since 1989. The types of evidence that are routinely used to convict people, including confession evidence, can be extraordinarily unreliable. Just looking at the DNA exonerations alone, we've had 365 throughout the country, and around 30% of those people falsely confessed, right? So made admissions to crimes they were completely innocent of. And so we have to take the information that we know about the criminal justice system, about evidence that's used to convict, and use it to implement change. We're really archaic now in terms of, what we're not in tune with what the social science and, what we know about the types of evidence that are being used to convict people. And we have to just take a step back. We have a system of mass incarceration.
How much of it is racially motivated?
Well, I think,
in your opinion?
I think if you look at the basis of the criminal justice system, it is a system that disproportionately targets and impacts and incarcerates people of color.
Were these 5 young men targeted?
Well, they were targeted. There's this whole notion of, that they were in the park wilding, and there's no denying that, racism played a huge role in their wrongful conviction and even how they're treated today. People are more outraged that Linda Fairstein is finally the prosecutor in the case.
Linda Fairstein, did she recently resign?
So she was, on the board of Vassar. She was, she went on to write books, and
she drove this case.
She drove the case.
And she had the evidence that the DNA did not match, and she never, forget about apologize, unless I'm wrong on this, she never said, hold on, time out, we got the wrong guys.
Never. And after their exoneration, she's never apologized. She's never officially acknowledged their innocence. And
Never.
And she, Vassar recently, asked her to resign from the Board of Trustees. And people are more outraged over this tiny consequence that she's facing today than what happened
Kevin, I'm
to
at 30 seconds. I'm sorry
the
for interrupting.
Exonerated Five.
Message to all of us. Give it to us.
The message is never judge a book by its cover. We were kids that just was raised with our parents, raised in a nice background, but we were judged because the color of our skin, and not by how we are. So I just want to just keep raising awareness to people and see our life story, and now you see us.
On Netflix.
On Netflix.
And they see you now. I want to thank you, Kevin, and most importantly, wish you and your family nothing but good health and a good life. Wish you the best. And Vanessa, thank you for adding perspective as well.
Thank you.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Welcome to the Voice Summit. I'm Steve Adubato. This is it's a 3-day event. 3-day event, right? Mm-hmm. It's big. It's at NJIT in Newark, New Jersey. Biggest voice summit in the world. We're pleased to be joined by Noelle LaCharite, who is Principal PM Manager and Applied AI, I believe that stands for Artificial Intelligence Engineer, at Microsoft. What do you guys do at Microsoft?
Something about windows and mice and buttons, something like that.
Okay, come on, break this title down for us.
Yeah, so Principal PM means I basically manage product. And so the products I manage are enterprise voice inside of things like Teams, Outlook, Word, right? How do we make that more frictionless? And then the second half is what I do for fun.
Applied Artificial Intelligence Engineer?
Right.
Come on.
It's what I do every day. So
okay, what is the thing?
I build applications with applied AI models, which are models that are really available to any developer on the planet.
Okay, here's what I do now. For example.
So for example, I was actually just talking about this with someone today. What if I had this great idea to create an application that could, like I have a son, he has Down syndrome, he has slurred speech, so he can't easily talk to something like Alexa or Cortana or Google. So what if I could build a model that could learn his speech as a dev? I could just build an app that understands his speech.
A dev, a developer.
Yeah, and then translate it so that Alexa or Google could understand what he's saying.
Doable?
Doable. And you don't even have to be like a data scientist or machine learning person. You don't need any of that.
What do you have to have?
You have to be a developer, which means you could start, literally you could go take a JavaScript course today, and by tonight you could be building machine learning models all by yourself.
Given how expansive the universe of those who could participate, including someone like me, who, let's just say, struggles with certain technological issues.
Right.
What does that mean? I know it's a big picture question. What does it mean for the future of voice technology if virtually everyone can play in the game?
Yes, well, I mean, that's my hope. I think it's also Microsoft's hope. We call it the democratization, right? What a word. Or commoditization, right? In the terms
Is there a difference?
Not really.
Really?
Not from the perspective of a dev.
Okay.
Yeah, probably from the perspective of a person wanting to make money off of my work.
Okay, I got it.
Right?
We can be small d democratic, but also be capitalist at the same time?
Apparently.
Okay, so you're saying as the field gets broader and broader and more people are participating, there's an issue that you brought up with our producers that I want to bring up with you.
Yes.
I told you before we got on the air, I'm a student of leadership. I teach it, I write it, I think about it. I'm not that good at it at times. You use an expression called mindful leadership. What the heck does that mean? Because I need to incorporate it in one of my seminars.
Yes,
What
absolutely.
is it? I'm not joking.
I have had the pleasure of working for some of the greatest CEOs and leadership teams at IBM, Red Hat, Amazon, Microsoft. And the leaders I would classify as good share some certain qualities. And I've kind of termed them mindful leadership, but things like people over product, like never putting the product before your team. Like those products come and go. I've watched the Fire Phone disaster. I watched Windows Phone go away. And all those people ended up moving into products that became extremely successful for the company. And if you didn't put them first, if you treated them like failures, like the product is, you would have lost those people.
People over product.
People over product.
If someone goes the other way, product over people, The outcome?
You lose those people, and your competitor picks them up, and they deliver a product that you thought you'd build.
Stay on mindful leadership. A second quality is?
So the second quality is basically how important it is to have velocity, not be basically a primary effort. So the way I term it is clarity over velocity. That you're always driving to get a clear understanding of what you're trying to do over doing it fast. So to give you an example, one of our executive leaders at Microsoft literally told a team, if the model isn't doing what we want or isn't right, it doesn't matter that you're supposed to release it next week or next month or next year.
What do you do? Call a timeout and say
You
we need?
totally
Come
do.
on, seriously.
Yeah, and you
Hold
lose
on.
money for the company.
Okay.
Yes.
See,
It's a mindful leadership tactic.
this
Not everyone
conversation-
can play.
This conversation is going to go in a different direction than our producers think right now because, as I said, we also have a podcast all about leadership, and this is going to be on it as well because I will tell you, what you just described in my mind is about being a truly strategic leader that says, I often argue, and I won't get on a soapbox, the difference between impact versus activity, right?
That's right, yeah.
Let's have a lot of activity, let's have
Yes.
deadlines, let's do a lot of stuff. I'm
Velocity,
sorry,
yes.
what impact did you have? I'm sorry, what?
Right.
You seem to be saying, if the game plan to do this thing, whatever it is not going to have the desired impact and is not strategic, you call a timeout and say, listen, we're not doing this?
That's right.
But we got a deadline.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Well, here's the interesting thing. AI, now that it's part of the mainstream, part of product teams, AI forces this, right? Because AI models start bad. There is no good AI model out of the box. They start wrong before they get right. You train them.
Artificial intelligence models, by virtue of them, start wrong?
Yes, because you're basically training it on data, and then you're asking it to make a prediction, and you never train it with enough data because you don't know what you're doing.
So you're revising as you get input.
We call it
and
an
feedback.
experiment. It's been called an experiment for decades, right? This is not a new thing, but now we're putting it in companies as their main product, and they're like, no, March, we got to get this puppy out the door, and everyone's like, who came from the AI side is like, this could fail tomorrow. The model could implode, and then we learn from that failure.
So what points do you get for putting a product out into the marketplace that really isn't well thought out, is not going to have a desired impact, and you know are serious problems? You think you get points for just making a deadline?
Right. But I think there is a methodology, a mindset from maybe 20 years ago that absolutely thinks that that's the scorecard.
Productivity cannot be confused with impact and mindful leadership.
That's right.
I love that. Why are you fascinated by leadership?
Probably because as a woman in tech, and specifically a minority, I've not had great peers or even role models or direct leaders that I could look at and go, I want to emulate that behavior. So I started looking past my direct line and identifying like, who are the senior leaders? Who are the corporate vice presidents, executive vice presidents, CEOs? What are they doing? And why is there such a big gap with what they're saying and my life? As like, I'm still a director, I'm still relatively senior in my field, but I do not get that same mindful, connection. I don't get empathetic. Nobody comes to me and says, oh yeah, don't worry about that deadline. If it's not the right thing to do, don't do it. I'm the one holding that bar.
But Noelle, let me follow up on this.
Sure.
I interview people all the time, and it's clear to me when someone is a really good communicator. And I'm not saying this simply because you're sitting across from me. You're a really good communicator, interpersonally strong. You're a good listener. You engage people. You have concrete examples. I can see. You from New Jersey?
No, New York City.
Yeah, I know. I was just setting you up for that. Okay, listen, we're not
I
always.
love Jersey,
hey,
though.
Hey, listen, we're not always second fiddle because we got the Voice Summit.
That's
But leave
right.
that alone for now. Here's my point. There are folks who think that the Voice Summit and this whole world of artificial intelligence is dominated by people who necessarily do not have great interpersonal skills, do not engage people. They are just people who are so smart, scored way higher than us on their math SAT or ACT or whatever it is, and they're a different breed. You seem, there's a question here, you seem to have it all.
Yeah, I've heard the term like unicorn used before, but I don't believe it. I actually believe that, especially now with AI, we are encouraging people to be storytellers, to be creative.
Storytellers?
Yes.
And artificial intelligence that some people think they're going to take over our thinking?
Yes, but they're actually not. And as a matter of fact, some of the best and most impactful technology that uses AI, like Alexa, has actually brought people together has helped people like my dad feel more part of the world instead of excluded from it. So there's very unique use cases that you have to think about that's well beyond just like, oh, is this person, is this technology going to take away a part of my job I didn't really like anyway, right? It's actually bringing the world together in a much more real way, I think.
You love this work.
I do.
You do great work.
Yeah, I love
And you're
it.
really good. You made my job very easy. You really broke this down. And you're called an evangelist.
I am, I think, self-described as an evangelist. And my friends would probably call me evangelist.
And you're a
There is no
teacher.
such role in my company.
You're a teacher.
I'm a teacher for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Noelle. Well
Thank
done.
you.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 30 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by NJIT, RWJ Barnabas Health, the Northward Center, PSC&G, the law firm of Gibbons PC, New Jersey Resources, and by TD Bank. Promotional support provided by New Jersey Globe and by New Jersey Monthly. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
I think at NJIT there are a lot of smart students.
I came to NJIT for mechanical engineering because with in-state, it's one of probably the top 3 schools for engineering.
It sort of creates a friendly competition where you can learn from them.
It's a great academic school.
I feel I'm being challenged, but at the same time, I love the classes I'm taking.
The atmosphere of being here is like being at an upstart company. It's that same kind of drive, that same kind of passion.